All right, good afternoon, everyone. Let me go ahead and start my video. Please note this is a recorded session. I'm joined by several individuals in the room. We have Trang Vo, who is the release manager. I have Cindy Himman, who is a lead trainer. And then I have Heather Curley, who is the ISO legal counsel. My name is Mark Richardson. I am the manager of customer experience and stakeholder engagement. On the line, I have several subject matter experts, and then I'm also joined by Joanne Serena, the VP of Customer Experience and Stakeholder Engagement, who wanted to kind of help frame up today's discussion. So before we dive into the deck, I wanted to turn it over to Joanne to say a few words, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Great. Thanks, Mark. And thanks, everybody, for joining today's call. Really appreciate it. Looks like we have a pretty large audience, and I know we did some outreach to really make sure that we could reach everybody who has an interest in this particular topic. So what I wanted to highlight was a couple of things. The team's obviously going to go through some changes to the RSEE implementation, specifically regarding the tagging requirements since our last call. And I think as many of you are aware, after our last call, all of you and many stakeholders really highlighted that the changes to the timeline for when tags can be submitted in order to validate them was somewhat problematic, right? We received a lot of feedback regarding the impact to your business processes and specifically around the scheduling function. So based on that feedback, we internally have had a number of discussions. The team's done quite a bit of research in terms of, what is the right approach to move forward. And so today the team will go over the details of what we are proposing in terms of an alternative approach. Essentially, we heard you regarding the impact to the timeline, and we certainly don't want or don't intend to disrupt that. So we do have some proposed validation that we think is still going to be helpful, which we'll also go over in this presentation today. So hopefully, I think the most important thing I wanted to convey was that we heard you, we understand the implications to the business, and that hopefully the approach that we're now taking is going to mitigate the concerns that were raised previously. So thanks for your participation, and I do appreciate all of the feedback that we did receive on this particular topic. So with that, I'll hand it back to Mark and the team, and then at the end, we'll circle back and we'll be curious to get your feedback on this approach going forward. Thanks. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Joanne. Appreciate it. All right. Well, with that, let's go ahead and dive in. So just housekeeping, please remain muted. To the extent you have a question, you can go ahead and post that in the chat or raise your hand. We'll be happy to call on you accordingly. I will naturally pause after each slide based on the slide's content to determine if there's any clarifying questions needed from the audience. All right, so here's our meeting agenda. Today we're going to cover the RSEE policy objective. I have Danny Johnson on the line to talk about that. We're going to quickly cover some of the stakeholder feedback, again, citing some of the items that Joanne mentioned, interrupting scheduling practices and associated timelines and things of that nature. And then we're going to cover this responsive enhanced implementation direction based on that feedback, and then kind of cover some of those next dates that Trang will cover. Go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, Danny, did you want to walk through policy intents, the policy intent?
Sure, Mark. Can you confirm you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so this slide should look familiar to anybody who's participated in the prior couple calls. It really is trying to frame what the policy intent of the RSEE2 changes were. The tagging changes that we're talking about as part of Track 2 are just one of a subset of tagging changes. The first was a requirement that LPT exports be tagged as generation from provisional. This was done to ensure all parties to the transaction understand the quality of the market award that they're buying. Ultimately, these transactions are sourced from resources internal to the California ISO's balancing authority area And while a high priority product would be subservient to serving CAISO load. The second tranche of changes, which is what we're really talking about today, was the creation of the different priority types for these lower priority exports. This is day-ahead LPTs, real-time LPTs, and real-time econs. The idea here was to continue the priorities that are first established in the CAISO's market runs for lower priority export transfers all the way through the hour. So the requirement was to have all of these LPTs tagged as GFP and then have a corresponding priority type embedded within the tag to allow the CAISO to honor the priority on which these transactions were purchased. So that's the policy and the intent of the policy. And Mark, I can turn it back over to you unless there's questions.
Thank you, Danny. Appreciate that. We do have a hand up. Michelle Keto.
Hey, this is Michelle Keto from the Energy Division. I just wanted to confirm my understanding. I have a bunch of questions, but I'll ask them later. But I just wanted to confirm that GPT, the provisional, does not mean that CAISO can automatically cut the exports. They still need to get permission from all the other folks on the tag. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's part of the NASB tagging construct, Michelle, is that if a established schedule was adjusted or curtailed, all parties would need to acknowledge the change.
Okay, so that's even true post-task. So this, the tagging of DA, RT, and RTE, those three different taggings, are just telling CAISO the order in which they can cut, but it doesn't give them any permission to unilaterally cut the tags even post-task. That's right? Is that right?
We can curtail the tasks, or the tags, but to your point, yes, but any curtailment would have to be acknowledged by both parties or all parties to the tag.
Okay, and then I just wanted to understand the relation to the RSEE. So if CAISO, this gets into a little bit maybe what you're going to talk about later, but if CAISO cuts the tag, if the CAISO cuts the tag, but it's not retagged appropriately, so let's say that, they go through HASP and they have we can't support it for, we lose a transmission line or something. CAISO cuts the tag, but the other balancing authority fails on their side to cut the tag. They still pass the RSE, is that right? Because they put those E-tags in their base schedule?
There is the potential for tags, to the extent they're not updated post-market award, to be reflected in base schedules. So long way of saying yes.
Okay. I mean, okay, I'll wait for the rest of my questions until later. Thanks for the clarification.
Sure. Thanks, Michelle.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Danny. So with that, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so again, this slide was provided, I believe, the last few stakeholder calls, but we wanted to kind of quickly pull it up again. While this conversation is focused on the tagging changes, I did want to provide a summary of the changes being implemented in an RSEE Phase 2, Track 2. We have the enhancement supply consideration rules in RSE, which is really around failed to start rule exemption. We have enhanced reporting transparency for market priority type in CMRI and ADS. CMRI now has 2 additional reports for scheduling entities to be able to see what level of priority the market assigned their associated transactions. And then we have the tag structure validation to include a valid CAISO priority type for day-ahead LPT, real-time LPT, and/or real-time econ. And we'll get into the next slide as to what exactly that means. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide here. So previous implementation direction, so prior to all of the feedback that we received from the community, the previous direction was going to be validating upon submit that the associated transaction had a assigned market priority based on the market results. So what does that mean? It meant that there was no ability for a scheduler to to submit that placeholder tag. They had to wait post-market results, whether it was for day ahead or half. This new direction, taking into account all of the stakeholder feedback, is to allow for that placeholder tag to be provided, and upon submission of that tag, the structure will be validated. So that is for product type GFP, the CAISO priority type will have to have a valid priority. So it has to be day ahead LPT, real-time LPT, or real-time econ. If the tag that has a product type of GFP does not have any one of those three options, it will fail validation upon submit, okay? This change in direction will allow tags to be created and submitted ahead of the market results publication, and the only validation that will be performed is the tag structure components upon creation of that tag. So let me pause there and see if there's any questions based on this. I see Michelle had her hand pop up, but let me see if there's anyone else from the community that has any question for this pivot, and then we'll dive in. All right, so I see, let's go to APS.
How's it going? So just to confirm that I understood correctly, you will allow tags to be put out as the placeholder, but they need to follow the form requirements that you guys have put out, I believe since last summer.
That is correct. So with RSE phase track 2 phase, or excuse me, RSE phase 2 track 1, last summer, all tags to date should be reflecting the appropriate product type and the appropriate market scheduling priority type.
Okay, that answers my question.
Awesome, and we'll be walking through a few scenarios here in the coming slides as well that have a little bit more detail for everybody. Let me go to Dave Francis, and then I'm going to go to Michelle.
Good afternoon. You hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Dave Francis, BP Energy Company. I just want to, it may be picking a bit of a nit, but I'm not sure that placeholder is recognized tag status. So I just want us to be careful that we don't arbitrarily assign a name to something that could be confusing, because all we're talking about is tags that are yet to be acted on. They're just being submitted, early as a relative phrase, but they have a valid purpose. They're not in lieu of something else. They're just being put in place to be acted upon in the future. So I've seen before where words have been, I might argue, used against stakeholders to CAISO's benefit, and I don't want us to get there. So just, again, a bit of a nit, but again, we're talking about early tags. Unless placeholders are defined NASB term, it seems like it's something better to use. Thanks.
No, agree, Dave. Thank you for that clarification. Danny, did you have a response to that?
Yeah, I wanted to respond to Dave. Is a more accurate characterization a tag without a confirmed energy profile? Because that's really what we're trying to get at. We understand the purpose for commercial needs of why these tags would be submitted before that, but that's simply what we're trying to denote, is that these aren't invalid tags, but the energy profile has not been confirmed because we haven't run the market yet.
But by the same token, unless every other actor on the tag has acted on it, everything's unconfirmed. It's just in there early. I think we're saying roughly the same thing. Thanks, Danny.
All right, thank you. Michelle.
Okay, so many questions. So one of the issues I thought was that folks said that they put in tags and NASB requires them to, well, under them, the markets were going to run, REC was going to run, or HASP was going to run, and then we were going to allow the LPTs to tag after the market run. And one of the complaints was that folks were not in the office over the weekend or in the evening, and it was too difficult to tag. But I would note that HASP ends at T-59, and the base schedules need to be submitted at T-55. So why do we think that folks are going to be able to change those tags if the market run says no in that 4 minutes? Like, is that not a reliability issue? And after that question, I have other questions.
Did you want to respond to that?
Sure. I mean, I think the response is that the CAISO has rules that these will be updated, Michelle, but I would defer to other parties on this call about how they would look to accomplish and meet those objectives.
Yeah, and I know we have a few scenarios a little bit later that get into, to the extent those tags aren't updated timely, there's other actions that take place at T-40 as well as post T-20 that some of the slides get into as well, Michelle.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just finish asking my questions and maybe those will answer them. So let's say that we get to HASP and CAISO counts 3,000 or cuts 3,000 megawatts of LPT exports. Let's say a transmission line goes down and we can't support the LPTs. If they fail to update their tags, first of all, they'll pass the RSE, right? Because the RSE is based on the approved tags, not your update of the cut, right? So I just want that. I think we just confirmed that, right? Okay, I'm going to assume we've confirmed that. So then what would happen is CAISO is now responsible for 3,000 megawatts of LPT, and they have to get permission from all the other parties to cut those LPTs. Is that right? And is that right?
Any adjustment to the tag would have to be acted upon by counterparties. The timing, Michelle, in which that adjustment happens has different counterparties. I think earlier, prior to T20, it's all of the parties to the tag, and then after that, if it's a curtailment, it would just be the reliability entities that are parties to the tag.
Okay, but let's just say we get to the reliability entities. We can only cut those tags with the other reliability entity if we're in a reliability crisis, right? An EEA 1, 2, or 3, or arming load, or calling on our strategic reserve resources. Is that right? The operator have to be reliability curtailment post T20. Is that right?
I think the operators for the California ISO BAA have a latitude in how they would treat these LPTs. Our practice would be to try to not imperil or create a reliability situation for any counterparties on the tag, if able.
Okay. Well, we're only going to be cutting them when there's an issue. So my concern is, the way we were previously doing it, if this occurred, we wouldn't have allowed the tag to come into being, right? The LPT, the 3,000 megawatts of LPTs would not be approved, and so they couldn't be tagged. So if another balancing authority was having an emergency, they would need to declare the emergency to get the emergency energy. The way we're doing it now, it appears to me that CAISO is going to have to declare the emergency to cut the tags, and that feels like that we're moving somebody's reliability emergency onto California customers.
So I agree, Michelle. I think the other proposed implementation would have simplified this going forward. Ultimately, though, if there's a reliability issue, no matter really where it is, the CAISO BAA, consistent with good utility practice and kind of under the NERC rules, will do what it can to help resolve that reliability issue.
I know, but the difference would be, in the first instance, if you don't tag the LPTs, the BAA that's having the emergency would need to declare it to get the emergency. In the second instance, if they fail to adjust the tags, we would have to honor them until we were in an emergency, right?
Again, it's system operator discretion on when and if they would need to curtail LPT exports.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm just going back.
I can't give you just like an order of a procedure of they'll do X before Y, before Z. These are dynamic situations, and our system operators are well trained to handle these and maintain reliability.
Okay.
And maybe Michelle, let me jump in. I think maybe when we get to some of these scenarios, to the extent you have some questions as to what happens at what time, those scenarios may lend themselves well to those questions.
Okay, well, I would just note that when Malin went down in July of 2021, I believe, I don't think that we cut the LPTs and we declared EEAs. Likewise, I believe not last summer, on July 20th, I believe, that we declared an EEA for this very reason, right? And we didn't cut maybe we did. It was not my understanding that we
So
cut the
there's
LPTs post-task.
so I don't want to, I think I can help with this, Michelle, to make sure there's no confusion out there. In 21, we didn't have the reliability curtailment tool that we're rolling out as part of this implementation, which should help to effectuate curtailments if we need to. The last summer's reliability issues were much more complex and nuanced, and really were an outcome of the way base schedules changed throughout the advisory process and how the California ISO cleared its HASP as one of a number of different issues. So I don't think there's a direct analog from a previous summer that we can draw upon.
Okay, I thought a number of entities in the summer reports, you said that a number of entities did not follow their curtailment instructions. That was my understanding. 2,500 megawatts did not follow their curtailment instructions. And then I understand that post-task, we didn't cut them, but maybe I'm wrong. But okay, I'll look at these.
No, I think
examples.
that's fair, and we believe that we've, through outreach and education, made a first step towards addressing that issue.
Okay, I will just.
But that is a fair point.
That we were doing this for reliability reasons, and now that we're going back to our original thing, I believe those reliability concerns remain. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Your concern is understood.
Thank you, Danny. Let me go to Dave Francis. Dave, I saw you shoot your hand back up, and then I'll go ahead and go to the next slide.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because Michelle probably just hadn't been exposed to it, that several of the trading entities, including BP, expressed to CAISO the concern around the day-ahead timeline, and that was really part of what we deal with. So the original CAISO proposal would have automatically cut day-ahead tags that had been submitted. That's an ongoing process, going on 30 years in accordance with the WEC pre-schedule. So that was kind of our concern. So it's not just the real-time and hourly. It got even worse when you looked at what happened to day-ahead, because it would have been our real-time guys are our process is manual and tagging, and they know to look for changes even if they're not doing new business. So the being able to get the day-ahead tags up on our normal pre-schedule calendar was very important for us.
Thank you, Dave. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so in maintaining reliability and transparency objectives of this policy, the ISO is proposing to automatic market adjustments to tags as an alternative approach. So in the day ahead, CAISO would adjust these tags following the publication of the market at 15:30, which is an existing practice today, and then a new adjustment at 17:30 down to the associated RUC award. In real time, CAISO would continue to adjust incremental tags submitted for real-time market participation at T-40 following the publication of HASP. So again, that is an existing practice that is done today. Now, market participants will be required to immediately accept market adjustments performed by the CAISO via their tagging systems. So that is a requirement moving forward. Not seeing any hands, and I think once we start getting into some of these scenarios, we'll get a little bit interesting. Oh, I see Christy from SRP with her hand.
Hi, Mark. I just had a question on what you mean by immediately accept. Are you referring to accepting in ADS or in the tag or another way?
That would be their tagging, your tagging system. So whether it's web tag, it's a PCI or OD product, whatever vendor is being utilized. it would be your tagging system that market adjustment is immediately accepted.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Thank you for the question. Dave, is that an old hand or a new hand?
New hand. Dave Francis, BP Energy Company. Just the comment of, we know that there are situations where the market gets published late. I'm guessing the 1530 and 1730 are nominal based on a 1300 published time.
Correct. And as you
Okay.
see today, to the extent day ahead is running late, the operations staff will be posting messages and would essentially allow for at least an hour post publication of day ahead results prior to that automated adjustment happening by the CAISO.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's one of those things learned through practice. Just want to make sure I touched it. Thanks.
Yep. And this immediate acceptance of market adjustments, that can be automatic or manual, but it needs to happen as soon as possible. I saw Connor Kelly with his hand shoot up. Connor, do you mind stating your affiliation and go ahead with your question?
Yeah, hey Mark, thank you. This is Connor with Calpine. I think last week when you guys have been doing some stakeholder engagement regarding some new direction in regards to the RSEE Phase 2 adjustments, there was kind of this comment about potentially a new RTM adjustment occurring at T-58. I'm just curious if that, I guess, has been scrapped. That's what it kind of seems like based on this presentation so far.
That is accurate. The previous potential solution had a lot of conversation around a T-58 market adjustment. After further conversations and stakeholdering, that T-58 was taken off, and essentially we are keeping the T-40 market adjustment as it is today to keep intact those pre-scheduling activities, not to disrupt the community from a tagging practice perspective.
I guess I'm trying to understand what the disruption would be to market entities for not having a T-58 market adjustment, because that to me seems to help kind of solve some of the issues with base schedules, including tags that may not actually flow for LPT exports.
No, I think that's a good question, Connor, and I'm actually going to turn it to the community prior to Danny to see if anybody wanted to opine on that reason. Not seeing any hands. Danny, did you? Oh, I just got a hand from Jenny at SRP. Go ahead, Jenny. Thank you. You may have to unmute yourself in the WebEx, Jenny.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go for it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I think Connor raised a very good question when you say immediately. What does that mean? Is it like today's half adjustment after T57 or before T57? What is the timeline we are looking at over here? And to my knowledge, I think I don't know how other BAs are situated, but our BA tags usually means if no action is done manually, it does get auto approval in 2 minutes. So it's 2 minutes immediately or not.
Yeah, I would say 2 minutes is within the acceptable timeline. Malosh, let me, I gotta mute you here. Sorry, let me, all right. Sorry about that background noise.
So,
yeah,
Mark,
go ahead,
I think
Danny.
I can help. I think we're pretty intentionally not putting an explicit time requirement on which this has to be done by. Our expectation is that as soon as you're able to. We understand that some of these real-time tags can be quite complicated with a lot of different parties to the transaction, but as soon as all parties are able to, we would expect them to be updated. But not understanding all of the different commercial implications and how our partners conduct their business, we want to provide a little leeway for them to figure out how to best do this as soon as they're able to.
Okay, thank you. That answers my later question. But like the publication time of the HASP auto adjustment.
Yeah. So that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So previous, there was a conversation around having a HASP adjustment at T-minus 58. That is no longer the case. There is no new introduction of a HASP adjustment. It is going to stay where it's at T-minus 40 for these types of transactions.
Okay, so it is the same impact as today, if I summarize, but now it will be maybe automatically adjusted. What are we getting out of this? If there is no input into improving submission from the WIM entities before T-minus 40.
Yeah, let me get to the next slide, Jenny, and I think by laying out the timeline, that might help answer that question and clarify for everybody. And then to the extent you still have a question, let me know. I see Nolan from Portland with his hand up. Go ahead, Nolan.
Yeah, hey there. I just wanted to comment that PGE is in favor of this. We do not have automatic acceptance built into our software systems, but that is something we will strive to include with new updates. So we appreciate the listening to stakeholder feedback here, and we are in agreement with this move forward.
Thank you, Nolan. I see Connor with his hand up, and then I'm going to go to Michelle.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I guess I just wanted to, I think to me, it felt like the T-minus 58 HASP adjustment that was kind of floated with an automatic approval felt like a kind of reasonable solution to capture any changes to LPT exports. So we're pretty supportive of that at Calpine. At least capturing those updates before the EIM intertype-based schedules were set. Is the concern that maybe the tags would not be approved by all entities before the T-minus 57 cutoff? Is that why we're scrapping this T-minus 58 HASP adjustment?
Did you want to weigh in there?
Sure, I think that's a fair characterization to the extent that there isn't a unanimous ability to effectuate these changes all the time. The T58 just adds additional complication as compared to the T40 adjustment that the CAISO's processes already have on the books.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Danny.
Right, Michelle, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, 2 questions. So what happens if market participants fail to accept the market adjustments immediately?
I have Heather in the room. Heather?
Yeah, Michelle, we're going to be monitoring it at this stage. I think our expectation is that, the participants are going to honor, the path we're walking through here today, and that when we are doing our regular monitoring, we're not going to see patterns of non-compliance. If we do, the first step, of course, is outreach and education to make sure everyone understands. It could be someone who wasn't on this call. But following that, it would seem that an intentional, an intent to circumvent these requirements in order to manipulate the scheduling priorities would constitute, would be cause for a referral to the appropriate regulators. If there's no intent there, a referral may not be appropriate. So we're going to monitor, and we're really hoping that we're going to see compliance across the board with that expectation, but we will be watching for any intentional actions to deny the tags for anything that is not an appropriate, reliability reason.
Okay, so two questions. Is it a tariff violation to not immediately accept the tag?
The tariff requires that LPTs be tagged, that the scheduling practices in the BPM be followed. That's what the tariff provides. So if you fail to follow the scheduling practices in the BPM, yes, you have violated the tariff.
Oh, okay. And then if the tag is immediately accepted at T-40 and it's cut, does it get removed from the base schedule for purposes of RSE?
Danny, I don't want to be, or Mark, I don't want to be wrong on that. I think I know what the answer is.
Yeah, so I would, so based on, and by all means, WEIM entities, if you wish to opine there, it kind of just depends on what the WEIM OAT states and how they account for interchange schedule changes consistent with the T-55 and T-40 base scheduling timeline.
So if they use a T-55 base scheduling timeline and they only have to cut their LPT exports by half, then the unsupportable LPT exports are in the base schedule. Is that right?
Danny, did you want to come on to that?
If the question is to the extent that the tags are not updated to reflect market awards, if megawatts that the CAISO market can't support are included in a base schedule, the answer is yes. That is a potential outcome if the rules as laid out in our BPM are not followed.
No. Here, I'm saying if you only require people to update by T-40, but the EIM entity uses T-55 for their base schedules, then you've cut the LPT exports, but their base schedule reflects it. Is that right?
I think I'm getting a little bit confused by the question, Michelle. At T-55, we have an advisory RSE. So if the updated tags can get captured in that, great. A lot of WEIM BAAs have some timelines associated with their oaths on establishing their base schedules. And I think at T-55, it roughly kind of transitions over to the reliability entity for managing participation. If they are updated between T-55 and T-40, I think they would also potentially be captured in the RSE, although depending upon each EIM BAA's oath, there may be some financial impacts.
Okay, that's a little unclear. So does that mean if...
Which part? Which part?
Okay.
I want to make sure we're clear on this.
Okay, so I'm unclear. So if the oath says that the base scheduling occurs at T-55, but you don't have to accept the HASP award until T-40, does the RSE have you, do you update the RSE for that EIM entity to fail because they've updated their, you know what, you're still muted.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So if I'm following, you're saying, would we go in and update or adjust their RSE obligations to reflect a schedule curtailment that wasn't captured in an adjustment on their side? Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, if they're doing their base scheduling at T-55 and you only require them to update their tags by T-40, there's a mismatch, right? Or am I missing something?
As well, I think that it's not missing something. I mean, we would expect what is in base schedules to be accurate as to what the market can awards. I guess what is missing is an automated process that would be a forcing function for that. That was roughly the first implementation that we tried, but we heard that that caused a tremendous amount of impact to the commercial operations of our partners. So we're simply saying we have rules. We expect what is tagged is reflective of being able to be supported by the market, and that the market participants and WEIM BAAs will expeditiously update their tags and base schedules as able.
Okay. But, okay, I can just see somebody saying, I can't update my base schedule between T-59 and T-57 for that. And then I adjusted my HASP, I adjusted at T-40, and I passed the RSE sort of mistakenly. That doesn't seem like a tariff violation, but it also doesn't seem right. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Which is, again, this path does have gray area, Michelle. Like, I don't want to minimize your concern, which is why, as Heather stated, we're going to be committed to monitoring and looking at tagging practices and using base schedules as counterfactuals and seeing how entities are actually following the rules.
How about publishing people who fail to tag appropriately? I mean, will we actually publish entities that fail to tag appropriately?
So in risk of getting out over my skis and getting in trouble with my legal counsel, I think that is a potential idea that could be discussed as part of PRR and BPM update process about how the CAISO would go about raising awareness on the tagging practices related to its market.
Well,
But
I just
Heather,
want to know like, if we.
I'd like your input there.
Yeah,
well, I
well,
guess
look.
Michelle, I'll just say, I think we share your commitment. You know, the CAISO did roll out an initial solution that had some different aspects than the one we're discussing with you today. I don't know if you were on that prior call. So I'm going to say we understand what you're saying. We don't have, you know, formal publication or, you know, kind of schedule reporting sketched out at this time. So I don't think we've even finished talking about the potential, you know, what we're discussing here on our deck. But I just want to echo that, you know, we share the commitment there, and it's a good idea to publish out the names. Again, hopefully we're not going to see any names on this list. And so take it back, but we just don't have those details right now. And I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, and through, going back to what Joanne mentioned earlier, right, there will be a lot of proactive outreach to those entities, just like there is today, based on current tags and what we're seeing on the ISO's end to ensure those tags are being updated going forward. And kind of based on how the conversation has gone, and looking at time, we only have 17 minutes, and I think a lot of the questions or clarification questions are going to come on the following two slides after this. So what I wanted to do here, and it's consistent with what you guys have heard and where the conversation has gone, is, you know, that immediate approval of tag market adjustments to match those awards allows the CAISO to ensure tags and base schedules are accurate, right? As Heather mentioned, the ISO will be monitoring to ensure tagging practices are accurate and will take appropriate referral actions to ensure tagging guidelines are adhered to. The ISO, as always, just like other sync BAs, retains the ability to make these adjustments in real time through T-20 to ensure market awards match submitted tags, as well as those post T-20 curtailments if necessary for reliability purposes. Go to the next slide here, and then I'll go to you, Ken. Thank you for your patience. All right, so what we wanted to do here was kind of articulate a scenario, and then which is a valid scenario, and then on the next slide, change the flavor of it to show how this valid scenario could have pro rata adjustment ramifications that exist today in production, but we wanted to highlight it here. So under this valid scenario, we have a placeholder tag, and let's just call it ABC1, for 100 megawatts with the product type of GFP and CAISO priority type equal to day-ahead LPT. RUC clears for 80 megawatts, right? Let's just say the results come out at 1,300. The day-ahead market adjustment to this tag is going to happen at 1530 down to 80 megawatts. That market adjustment needs to be accepted immediately by the associated participant, right? Another run will happen at 1730 to the extent a tag came in post 1530 to capture any adjustment needed by 1730. And again, back to a previous comment, to the extent the day ahead publishes late, the ISO will post associated notices, allowing for ample time to review those tags prior to these adjustments kicking off. Now, heading into real time, to the extent that participant is seeking to fulfill the full original 100 megawatt position, any additional energy looking to flow in real time should be reflected on a new tag for 20 megawatts at real-time LPT or real-time econ. So whether you're economically bidding that in, that would be real-time econ, or to the extent you're self-scheduling that 20 megawatts, it would be real-time LPT. That would be reflected on a placeholder tag. You know, let's say you submit it in advance. And I know, again, semantics here, placeholder tag, XYZ2. That would be for 20 megawatts, product type GFP, and then it would be real-time LPT or real-time econ, again, based on your position. HAF runs and publishes, call it right around that T-minus 60, T-minus 59 time frame, and only awards 15 megawatts. If no action is taken on that tag, a market adjustment will happen at T-minus 40 down to 15 megawatts. The expectation and requirement is that that market adjustment is immediately accepted. Now, I want to, let me go to Ken and then see if there's any questions on this scenario. Thank you for your patience, Ken.
Yeah, no worries. I just wanted to clarify. I think there's two, workflows to submit intertie submissions to KISO, right? We have our hourly binding base schedule submissions by T57 through BSAP, but the RTSI pre-hour data still makes its way in, right? To BAOP, so that those adjustments can be made all the way up for auto approval up to T-minus 20, right? So
yeah, so any interchange changes post T-minus 57 get reflected in RTSI, feeding into the T40 RSE.
yeah, and I think that might have added to confusion with other folks about when it's, you're still getting intertie data, but it changes the application that's processing interchange, right, for the rest of the RSD and the other things like Flex, for example, right? That'll continue to make to receive RTSI pre-hour all the way up to that T40, right, for the test submission.
Yep. Thank you for that, Ken. All right, let's go to the next scenario, and I'll call out the differences here because, again, this is a valid scenario. However, in that valid scenario, if you resubmitted that position utilizing the same resource ID, there are some ramifications that exist today. This is not changing as part of RSE Phase 2 Track 2, but we thought it was important enough to call out with the community. So this is a pro rata adjustment scenario. So again, we have a tag that is sitting out there pre-market run. This tag is ABC1 for 100 megawatts. Product type is GFP, and associated KISO priority type is day-ahead LPT. RUC awards at 80 megawatts. The day-ahead market adjusts that down at 1530 to 80. That market adjustment is automatically and or manually accepted immediately by the participant. In real time, a new additional placeholder tag, XYZ2, is submitted for 20 megawatts with the product type of GFP, KISO priority type real-time LPT, or real-time econ, utilizing the same resource and or transaction ID. If that happens, market adjustments to the tag at 1730 down to 80, given that it's the only awarded amount. So what you will see happen, ABC1 tag would be adjusted down to 66 megawatts because that's the pro rata share of the award. And the XYZ2 tag would be adjusted down to 14 megawatts because that's its pro rata share of the total 80 megawatt award. So if a participant is seeking to fulfill the original 100 megawatt position, any additional energy seeking to flow in real time should be reflected on a new tag, as well as the utilization of a different registered resource ID or different transaction ID to avoid that pro rata adjustment. Because what will happen is, instead of having 80 megawatts at a day-ahead LPT priority, now you only have 66. So the ISO just wanted to highlight that. Cindy Hemman will be going through a few more scenarios in her training. I believe it's this Thursday, correct? Okay. So more to come, more scenarios on that. Are there any questions related to this before moving on to the next slide? Not seeing any hands. All right. Next slide. All right, let's talk a little bit about next steps.
All right. So Mark already mentioned that we have a refresher training this Thursday to prepare for the market simulation, the full market simulation that will resume with the new changes here and the new direction. So market simulation, we do plan to start sometime between mid-March through the beginning of April. And we do have the market simulation calls Mondays and Thursdays at 2 o'clock Pacific to go over the updates for that. And so if you're interested, you can join in those calls and or reach out to marketsim@kaiso.com for updates to register for that market simulation. For production, our go live is targeted prior to the summer of 2024, and that will be dependent upon the market simulation results. So we will monitor that closely when we do resume the full market simulation, and then as we get more certainty on the progress there towards our production readiness, we will communicate further next steps for production, including the target.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I see the hands. Give us 1 second on the hands. All right, this is the slide I wanted to get to for stakeholder feedback. Let me start with Dan Williams, then I'll go to you, Michelle.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Dan Williams from the Energy Authority. So I just had to, similar to PGE, raise a hand and say thank you to you, Joanne, Danny, Heather, the whole ISO team for working together with market participants to come up with a solution that feels like a good step forward that accomplishes a lot of what the ISO was looking for without creating too many difficulties on the participant side of things. We're going through a lot of changes right now, and with market design, with everything in the West, and it's going to take kind of small steps forward to keep dealing with issues as they come up and to fix things. And I hope that the ISO can continue to kind of take this approach of reaching out to industry and, kind of testing some of these incremental changes as we go, maybe a little bit earlier in the process. But I do really think that you've addressed things well here, and I think that to the extent there are latent resource sufficiency evaluation test issues, that those will fit nicely into the next phase of the upcoming initiative, and we can keep, kind of iterating from there, or, if something emergency comes up, bring it into the PRR space. I did want to check, though, if there is anything changing still in the PRR BPM space related to this, or if this documentation and through the training that Cynthia is going to lead is sort of our documentation of where this operationalizing what's in the tariff is going to live.
Yes, you will see some associated PRR-related submissions supporting these changes.
Right, there's a level that the BPMs needs to be a bit clarified after last summer, and we want to add the specificity that we're discussing here. So you will see those come through in changes to the EIS, or actually, I don't know, the market operations BPM.
Great, and I also just want to say that I appreciate the way that Heather talked through the potential for referral as needing to have a intent element within it. I think we look back at like the intertie deviation issues that came up a number of years ago. You could say some of those were from intent, but the vast majority of them were errors. And as the issue got raised, market participants fixed their behavior, and ultimately it's a non-issue at this point. As far as the data goes. And I expect similar things here, that people may make a mistake every now and then, but I think we've heard loud and clear now within the participant community that these practices need to be followed in order for everything to kind of work together going forward. So appreciate all the effort, and we'll look forward to that training later in the week.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate your comments. Let me go to Joanne, Serena, then I'm going to go to you, Michelle.
Why don't we sorry, Mark, go ahead and go to Michelle, and then I'll wrap it up, as I know we're almost out of time.
Okay, go for it, Michelle.
Yeah, so I just wanted to follow up on what I was talking about before, and I would say that the pattern of behavior is difficult, because I don't expect this to be a pattern. It's really only going to matter during the very stressed system conditions, which maybe happen once a year, once every 2 years. So I think we should bear in mind that we expect to see issues only during those stress system conditions when the LPTs can't be supported. So if you're only going at patterns of behavior, I would note that, you know, during any stress condition, not following the orders is going to have, you know, reliability consequences for California and CAISO customers. Thank you.
No, thank you, Michelle. And I think, you know, through that proactive monitoring, those associated participants, or when those issues arise, to the extent a priority is incorrectly reflected on the tag, they will be proactively engaged by ISO staff.
Yeah.
Appreciate your comments. Joanne?
All right, thanks, Mark. I just wanted to sort of close certainly with a thank you to all the stakeholders that have been engaged in this process. And thanks for the participation today and the feedback, especially from Dan and others. I think, to your point, Dan, there isn't a perfect solution. And I think what we've tried to do here is collaborate with everybody to come up with a workable path forward. And I do take Michelle's point seriously. I do think we're going to be looking at situations where, you know, if there is a compliance concern, if the tagging practices are not being followed, it is on us to be stringent on making sure that that is adhered to from a reliability perspective. I think we had some good lessons learned last summer. I think we've made a lot of improvement since then. I think this implementation will further improve things, and we will continue to look, you know, from an iterative perspective for continuous improvement. Maybe we will take into consideration, you know, what Michelle mentioned in terms of making sure people are complying with that, with the requirements, and continue to evolve. So if anybody has any other comments or questions, feel free to reach out to me or the project team here for any further clarifications. Otherwise, I do get the sense that we have a amicable path forward so that we can continue on with the market sim and put in place these changes for summer of 2024. Any other last comments or questions?
I'm not seeing any new hands, Joanne. Thank you for wrapping it up.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I don't know if you had any other slide with any other material. I think there was a question about whether we'll make the PowerPoint available. I believe it is available. Is that right, Trang?
Yep. That link was posted in the chat, and it's out on the website as well.
We'll post the recording by tomorrow.
And the recording will be posted by tomorrow of this call.
All right. And so we'll look forward to the training, and certainly the market simulation calls coming up is another forum to address any concerns that we find along the way. Otherwise, thanks, everybody. I really appreciate the collaboration on this particular issue. Thanks.
All right, it looks like we just had a question posted in the chat. Let me take a quick look here. That is correct, Todd. All right.
And just in case, oh, it did go to everyone.
Yep, it went to everyone. Everyone saw it. All right, well, we are at time. Really appreciate everyone's engagement. Thank you again for everyone that joined today, and look forward to participation in Market Sim. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.